Political pollsters and pundits have a short-term memory, myself included. So about a week ago when I was looking at the polls, I just thought to myself, there's really no way that Donald Trump can win. The more I dug into it, the more I looked at swing states, the more I looked at battleground states, the more I started to think, this feels like 2016 all over again, but I don't know how. So I've been trying to analyze as much as I could to figure out what's going on here. Polling has not gotten better since 2016. And later this week, I think on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm going to release a video that does a really, really deep dive into polling and the issues with polling. But today I wanted to talk about the top battleground states from 2016, how they polled in 2016, and how they're polling now. How they're polling now, it looks like Joe Biden has a pretty good and pretty sizable lead. So we're looking at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona. So you look at this, and you see that Biden has a 4.7% spread. But when we dig a little deeper, that doesn't really mean that much on October 12th. When you look at the battlegrounds from 2016 to now, Donald Trump, I meant to make this video on Saturday, which would have been good because he was actually almost a point ahead of where he was polling in 2016. But he's actually polling better now in the swing states than he did in 2016. So let's go state by state and figure this out. Starting with Pennsylvania. Where was Donald Trump polling on October 12th in 2016? On October 12th, he was polling at 39%. It's pretty abysmal. 39% to 47.7. That is an 8.7% difference. So how's he polling against Joe Biden today? 7.3%. So most people look at these polls and you think 7.3%, well, geez, he won the state of Pennsylvania, but he's behind by 7.3%. How's he going to win this time? Well, he was down much further in 2016 than he is today. So did they fix their polling? No, they didn't fix their polling, which I'll get into in my next serious video on polling. So then we have Michigan in 2016. Let's see how this looks. So he was polling at 34.7% in Michigan. He won the state of Michigan by 0.3%, but he was polling at 34% in 2016. How's he polling in 2020? He's polling 7 points behind, but he's polling at 43%. So he's polling way better now than he was in 2016 at this time in the race in Michigan. Same thing with Wisconsin. How is he polling? I had all these set up and it moved on me because of the ads. The ads changed. October 12th, he was polling at 37.8%. I want to say that again. He was polling at 37.8% on October 12th. How's he polling now? 43.6%. So here in Wisconsin, he's polling at 43.6%. He's behind 6.3 points. At this point in 2016, 6.7 points. He was behind 6.7 points at this time. He's behind 6.3% at this time. How was he polling in North Carolina? In 2016, on October 12th, he was at 42.2%. I mean, when you look at these numbers, 39%, 32%, it begs the question, how did he win in 2016? And sort of how does that compare to now, 2020? I mean, is there more enthusiasm for Donald Trump now than there was back then? Because back then he was polling in the 30% in swing states. This guy was talking about how there's a sea of Trump flags everywhere. And I wrote this. I said, when I was going over the electoral math again today, and that was 2 days ago, which was when he was 1 point ahead, I said, when I was going over the electoral math again today, as well as when I was making the Biden video, it just feels like 2016 all over again. In 2016, Trump had to win all Romney states, plus the big three, Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. If he accomplished that, then what was the question for those of us in the political science realm? It just didn't seem possible that he could win 270, even if he swept the big three. So that would get him to 254 electoral votes. Then he needed to win Iowa to get to 260. Then he needed to get one of the blue wall of the upper Midwest states. Those seemed so far out of reach. 260 electoral votes was literally the upper limit for which Trump could not pass. Again, based on normal political thought and theory. It's dang well close to that exact same scenario now, but instead of Ohio, which had 18 electoral votes, mostly in the bag for Trump, currently is mostly in the bag for Trump, and not really contested by Biden at this point, the state in question is Arizona. So again, he's polling about where he was in 2016 in Florida, North Carolina, and only lost ground in Arizona. So if he wins Florida and North Carolina but loses Arizona, what are his pathways? I go on to say he can win Pennsylvania and doesn't need Arizona, as long as he holds on to Nebraska second and Maine second. He can win in Minnesota and in Wisconsin, and I think that gets him to 269. So in essence, he would win because each state gets one vote if there is a tie in the Electoral College. Republicans have 26 state delegations. Each representative and senator within a state gets a vote within that state delegation. All the legislative people from one state and all the senators and the two senators from that state will come together. They'll have a vote, and a majority vote for one candidate or the other means that state goes towards the presidential candidate. Now, if that happens, right now, Republicans have 26 states, Democrats only have 22, and then there are two deadlocked states where it's even. And if it's an even vote between Republicans and Democrats, that state's vote is thrown out. There's basically a no vote. So in that case, Donald Trump would get a majority of the votes and he would most likely become president. The only difference is that it's possible that during this election some states flip. It's not looking good. Most projections put that at least Republicans will have 25 states and Democrats will have 23 states, usually is kind of what they're projecting. But I digress. Then he can win in Wisconsin and Michigan. Hell, he could, in theory, lose the entire upper Midwest region, including Pennsylvania. As long as he wins Arizona, Nevada, and New Hampshire, that's exactly 270. Do I think he's going to win Nevada and New Hampshire? No, but it's to prove a point. I just think, unlike 2016, Trump has way more pathways to 270 this time, along with greater enthusiasm, and 56% of Americans say they are better off now than they were 4 years ago. The highest number that number has been since Gallup has been conducting that question for incumbent re-election survey. So back to this. On October 12th, he was polling at 37.8%. He's 5 points ahead of where he was in 2016. North Carolina, on October 12th, where was he at? He was at 42.2% on October 12th in 2016. Now, one thing I'm not accounting for, and I just realized this, was that the election was held, I believe, on November 9th last year. And so there's actually 6 days less. But this is where he was polling on October 12th. Current day, North Carolina. He's polling at 46.9%. On to Arizona. He was polling at 42% on October 12th. And now he's polling at 45%. So he's polling a little bit better, but also so is Joe Biden. And finally, let's take a look at Florida. Donald Trump was only polling at 42.4%, and Clinton was polling at 45% in Florida. So it was basically 42.5 to 45. But if we look at today's polls, Biden is polling about 2.9 points higher, and Trump is polling about 2 points higher. So Florida looks like it's trending away from Donald Trump at this point. But remember, back in 2016, he was only polling at 42%. He's polling at 44%. As of today, that's what the average is for him right now. So when you look at the whole thing, 4 years ago, Clinton was ahead by 6.8% in Pennsylvania. Right now, Joe Biden's ahead by 7.3%. In Florida, Clinton was ahead by 3.6%. Biden's ahead by 3.7%. Wisconsin is Clinton's ahead by 6.7%. Biden is currently ahead by 6.3%. In Michigan, Clinton was ahead by 10.7% at this point. Biden's ahead by 7%. 4 years ago, Trump was ahead by 0.7%. Biden's ahead by 0.06%. But when you look at, for example, the reason that most people have written off Ohio is because look at how they voted. There was basically a 7-point differential. So if this is really how Biden's polling, and there's still that 8-point or 7-point differential, then Biden's going to lose the state by 6 points. So I want to switch topics. I actually continue talking here, but I cut it off. It's not really that important. Let's talk about the glaring weaknesses in what I just presented. The first one is that, believe it or not, Hillary Clinton was actually a worse candidate than Joe Biden. Hard to believe, I know. Joe Biden's pretty bad. Biden is polling at or around 50% in a lot of these places, or closer to 50%, which means that there are much less undecided voters. And that means that there's less room for movement and room for improvement for Donald Trump. The second thing is that it is possible that these polls are actually capturing the enthusiasm difference that we saw from last year to this year. And what I mean by that is, if he was polling at, say, 38% like he was in Pennsylvania, but now he's polling at 44% or whatever that spread was, that could be that differential of enthusiasm. he's polling at 38%, and then now he's polling at 46%. So if they've accurately identified and improved Donald Trump's numbers based upon enthusiasm, that could also be reflected in the polls. I doubt they did that, but I just want to point out. So those two things kind of are where my analysis is weak, is that Biden is polling near 50% in a lot of those places, or closer to 50%, which means there's less undecided voters. Less room for Donald Trump to improve. And just to drive the point home, it's possible they've captured the enthusiasm gap, and that's why he's polling sometimes 6 and 7% better in some of these swing states than he was in 2016. If you like political and social commentary, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, and I will see you next video.